Hey, it's Chris. You know, some nights I really just don't feel like filming, truth be told. But when you talk about games like this and you just enjoy talking about it, as soon as the camera clicks on, you're over it, right? May is upon us. 2023, though. 2023, do you remember a year ago? Oh my gosh, we're looking back again. A year ago on freaking crowdfunding, right? What was going on a year ago on crowdfunding? How do you feel about things, them apples, now? Ranking, reviewing them, letting you know my thoughts a year later. Regrets, FOMOs, everything else in between. You ready? Some big ones. Let's go. You know, let's start with the biggest one of that month, right? Aeon, Trespass, freaking Odyssey. Reprint, more stuff, more stuff, more stuff. Just an absolute massive, near level jumping shark amount of content, right? For a game I love. Right? So that's the tricky point. And I think it brings up one of the most prevalent, relevant, I don't have any other words that end with ANT there to go along with this, but points on crowdfunding. But I'll make the argument, even retail as well, of saying how much is too much? And again, shouting from the rooftops. I feel like at times I'm like alone shouting at the rooftops saying that. Like, you can have too much, right? You can have too much Marvel United. You can have too much Aeon Trespass Odyssey. You can have too much Marvel Aeon Trespass Legendary. Anyway, you can have too much Marvel United. That one hits home. You can have too much of Millennium Blades. That one hits home. You can have too much Aeon's End. That one hits home. You can have too much Star Wars Unlimited. You can have too much of any of those, right? Pick your whatever. Marvel Champions, Arkham Horror LCG, Kingdom Death Monster, Aeon Trespass Odyssey. And therein lies the question, right? Like, how much is too much? And it reminds me of the old, what was that? Was it Supreme Court or just court situation when they said, well, how do you define porn, right? Well, I know it when I see it. And I'd make the argument the definition of too much is just that as well with this, right? I know it when I see it. I've got too much. And I mean that in the most literal sense of games. Not that necessarily I have too much of that. And I just know it when I see it, though. And it begs the question, right? It's in the eye of the beholder. And I know it by you know it by you. So how variable is that in our hobby? Because I'd make the argument that, you know, there are hundreds or thousands of people on Working Geek with many more games than myself. And I think I have way too many. I think I have 50% to 60% too many. And I would make the argument that in their eyes, they don't have too many, right? You know, 2 is too many and, 12 isn't enough sort of scenario. This game is freaking awesome. And if they just keep doing their thing, Into the Unknown is going to just massively blow away expectations out of the water with everything included from that aspect of things. But you have to ask yourself, do I have the bandwidth? Literally, figuratively, metaphorically, timing, allegorically, onomatopoeia. I don't know. I'm just throwing out other words there, right? My mother was an English teacher. She'd be mad if I threw all those together and she knew about it. But you know what I'm saying. And so that is by far and away the biggest test. And that's why it's fun to talk about. It's why it's relevant, because it's not just good game. It's a great freaking game. But it's also not a great freaking game for everybody. You still have your people that hate what it brings. And that's okay. Not everyone likes the hard, heavy, 5-rate weighting on Board Game Geeks. And that's okay too. But I'm not going to deride people at the same time for liking that and me not liking it. Right? So you can have too many of those 4+ weight euros, though, just the same. Take that for what you will. Because price point, let's be clear on this last point on this one before I move on, before I get off this soapbox. Price point isn't the issue here, right? It's the other aspects of things. Because whether it's you have 8 $50 games that aren't getting to the table because you have 37 of them that are all the same weight, all the same occupying space and game group presence stealing, or if you have one $400 game, right? It's the same. But her hobby doesn't treat it like that. Many fanatics don't treat it like that. We should. You know, as I've said previously many times, miniatures are deluxifications. So are Euros with their coins and their blinged out pieces. Two sides, same coin. Okay, there we go. I'm done. Rant over. So then we went a little bit sideways and we went with Apex Legends. You know, from Glass Cannon Unplugged. I would make the argument that I'm most excited about this game of their ones that we have known about, because coming up next from them, they also have the Diablo license, which is going to be really interesting. Previously, they had Frostpunk, and then we just covered Dying Light. And of all of them, to be honest, Apex Legends still stands head and shoulders above for me. Dying Light was fine. It wasn't quite what I was expecting from a cooperative, which was interesting. I like the parkour elements of things, but Apex Legends, again, if you've heard me talk on the channel, like, it's one of my skirmish head-to-head asymmetric boom shakalaka games. Like, okay, I just worry about the setup, teardown, overhead. That's the issue, right? But I love these style of games. I love them. Love them to pieces. Love them to death. No. But that's why I'm so intrigued by it. Because I think the ceiling is, dare say, second only to Aeon, Trespass, Odyssey on this list. And that's some big pedigree. And that's with an IP. And we don't have a ton of great IP-based games. And so wouldn't it be really nice to get a really, really good one again? Wouldn't you like that? I would like that. Because, you know, I want to see more really, really cool IP-based stuff. Not for my wallet's sake, but for my nostalgia's sake. You know, with Simon's going back in the Wayback Machine, and they're just grabbing the stuff from the 80s. No, I want the stuff from the 2000s. I want anime. I want good IPs more recently. Video games that are transcendent, right? Like, we've got the Simon, Metal Gear Solid, whatever, whenever, right? Like, whoa. Give me a licensed Super Smash Brothers that plays true from that aspect of things. Give me an actual freaking Mario Kart game, right? Where's my Pokemon boys, right? That's the stuff that is just completely missing on the tabletop scene. And so games like this, if they are successful, tabletop, hobby gamer, niche player, good, we'll see more of them because you'll have publishers willing to go after more expensive things. Now, let's just go right on that tangent, right? Monster Hunter Iceborne, Steamforge. Well, I mean, it's Monster Hunter 2.0. Monster Hunter is a solid IP. Monster Hunter is a solid crowdfunding campaign. And I forgot I'm supposed to do this, right? Like, pull up the crowdfunding page, you can kind of see where things are at. I always forget about that because in the 2022 and 2021 videos, I never have to do that anymore, hardly. And so, again, like, only 4,700 people. I would have guessed nearly double that, but it still raised $1 million. So, right? And deliverable in August 2023. Wow, that ship has literally not sailed. But, you know, they've kind of just, you know, Kickstarter miniature-based projects. I'm not terribly surprised by that. The only unfortunate thing is it's probably going to be at least a year overdue at this point because they're just closing the pledge manager prior to me filming this, I think, because the last update was at the beginning of April. And they've said, sorry, I screwed up the name earlier, Don't Starve is the next IP, but they've said that they're not going to put that out until this is basically like final production ready for fulfillment. So I really like that. I like that transparency. I like that, hey guys, we're not going to stack these up too high either. Team versus team. I'm not a huge fan of team versus team, but boy howdy, if I can play it 1 versus 1, you got me. So I'm really intrigued from that side of things. So then let's just pull up Monster Hunter as a whole right here, right? This compared to the Apex Legends, I wasn't kidding. This has a huge, massive following. I don't know if it's just the miniatures though, or just the following in general. Because if you had asked me, I maybe wouldn't have guessed that. But after 2 campaigns now, 13,000 people, and probably, you know, almost 4 times the amount of money. That's freaking insane. Now, it's supposed to be delivered by the end of this year. Thought they were going to be on queue, but the latest update from, what is it, April here? Yeah, the end of April. So it just kind of indicates that they're still doing the master resins for these massivatures, right? Which, you know, again, they put out some of the best miniatures on the market, them and Awakened Realms. But if these are the master resins and you're not even in production and we're in April 2024 and supposed to be delivered in November of 2024, you know, you're probably looking close to a year out at this point. I would argue. Maybe not, maybe a little bit sooner than that, but I'd be surprised too. Again, which is kind of okay. I guess it really doesn't matter. The only question I have with this is it really going to be 2.0? Right? Look at all these miniatures. Those aren't miniatures. Those are, again, like I said, massivatures. And it's got a lot of exclusive content. So that's the big downside. I'd be very interested to try this out, especially comparing it to Primal, which I'm starting to work my way through as well right now. So just head to head, right? Still talking about it comparatively. Do you FOMO it? Are you FOMOing it? Or again, as another lifestyle game, no worries, right? Hakuna Matata. The other one we have to talk about, because it's a game I would love to have in my collection, but when it went on crowdfunding, Direwolf and Clank Legacy 2, Acquisitions Incorporated, Darkest Magic, I said, no, right? There was zero incentive for me as a gameplay driven person to get it on there. Just zero. And that's okay, right? It didn't even have sort of the slight Jurassic legacy of the different miniature resin, whatever things. And I just said, you know what? If this ends up being cheaper, great. If it doesn't, well, so be it. I made my peace with that. I haven't played the first one yet. Because also, I've realized that legacy games are an incredibly difficult thing to do. I would argue more so than most of the other lifestyle games that we talk about. Because, as I've said in a recent video as well previously in the past month, legacy games are lifestyles too. So, I mean, when you go over to the page, right, 10,000 people, $1 million, and it's $100 for this if you wanted it. So, again, not a lot of reason to necessarily get it on there. Again, I think this is fine. I don't know, Clank has just never hit for me. I have Catacombs. With the recent announcement of Catacombs or leakage of news or Direwolf posting on Twitter, you know, along those lines of the expansion upcoming for Catacombs, because you knew it was coming, right? Like, they're not going to put an expansion out for the best one in the series. I mean, again, I feel weird because you had people that played it, but you can't actually give any details. No details are given, essentially. You can get the rule book of it, but that's the problem with legacy stuff on crowdfunding. There's no incentive necessarily. And it's high risk, kind of high reward, but I don't know. Delivery was supposed to be in June. And they say with the latest update, which is unfortunately not even in the last month, towards the middle of March, so almost 2 months ago, that, well, they're starting to finish the component review. So clearly, June not happening, folks. And they say later in the spring they'll give a closer estimate. So I would imagine that has to be this month, because otherwise we're out of spring. And then I would imagine that you're going to be probably getting this one around the holidays, if I had to guess. Which holiday? Take your pick. If you're feeling optimistic, go Halloween. If you're not feeling optimistic, pick Christmas. But that'd be the concern. So, and is that really a concern? No, it's not a concern. Who cares? If you're like me, you just back it and forget about it. Whenever it shows up nowadays. So I'm completely okay with that from that aspect of things. But legacy on crowdfunding, it's not going to stop, but what's going to be your incentive to do it? Then, I mean, let's just stay with all the IP stuff, right? Let's just get all these IP things out, because again, this one killed it, Dead Cells. Again, the rogue-like game, and Scorpion Mosque, nearly 12,000 backers said, we're going to spend a whole bunch of money and raise almost $2 million. So impressive. Metroidvania dungeon crawler. September 2024. Again, IP very similar in a different style of, as I mentioned, Metroidvanias and your Slay the Spire-esque, taking a solo player game and making it cooperative. And so far, impressions on Slay the Spire seem to be relatively positive. But, you know, just like with that, I'm not sure that I really look at it and go, I need to play this as opposed to the video game. I like the idea of that, but games like this and Slay the Spire nowadays, I'm really trepidatious about. I'm just sort of angsty about, because there's just so much upkeep. Because you have to emulate things. And Slay the Spire appears to be sort of straddling the fence in terms of taking the, it's close enough to what you're used to and like, but it's different enough that it's not a complete copy of the video game. So there's an incentive, a motivation to actually own both. With Dead Cells, I mean, that's, again, it's a big question mark, because I would make the argument that no one really knew what Slay the Spire. Contention Games knew. No one else did. And same thing with Sports Game Mosque here, is just saying, how are you going to be able to tell? And the honest answer is, until you get your copy and until you get to play it and until you can compare it and until you see how it really does at that 3 and 4 player count, even with Slay the Spire, are you going to have as much enjoyment out of it that you think you're going to have versus you actually have. So again, as you can see above my head, September of 2024. Unfortunately, again, April news right here. Well, everything is going fine, they say. Everything is fine, you know, the dog and the fire. And anyway, no, just kidding. They're working through production. So if they're actually at production right now with some of this stuff, you're going to be potentially getting your game on time, which is kind of nice. We'll see. You'll see this year if this really makes you super intrigued or if you're going to have little regrets one way or the other. I mean, of the two, Slay the Spire for me. But again, it's one of those where I'd be interested, just having played Children of Morta in a similar adventure, roguelite style of situation. You know, the complexity to set up the teardown. Children of Morta, it was, you know, that was what they went for. It's just, they wanted to give it to you streamlined, straightforward, low overhead, boom. It's going to be lighter than either of these two, but does it matter to you? Is it going to be easier to get to the table versus harder to get to the table because of those dynamics that you want, but inevitably are going to also hamstring you? So then we go over and we talk about one that's, again, on my radar. Never been able to pull the trigger of Aeon's. No, just kidding. Astronight's Eternity. Aeon's End Attorney. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. Standalone cooperative deck building, scenario-based, ongoing narrative, all, you know, mixed in, but not mixed in. Aeon's End without this shuffling style, if you will. But it begs the question, right? For a game that is getting rave reviews, a game that is now delivered less than a year later on the crowdfunding side of things from Indie Boards and Cards, 8.5 rating on Board Game Geek. Why is this not doing any better? Why is this not reaching the levels of Aeon End? I don't know, folks. I don't know. I'd love to try it. And I look at this and I go, this should be something I like. And I'm just at a saturation with Aeon's End, and I've just never been able to pull myself into Astronauts. I mean, they say it's better in theory. Does, you know, some of the criticisms justice, addresses them, you know? That's intriguing. That's exciting. I have too much. And the problem, I think, and the fear, if you're in my shoes, right, is what if you do like it better? You're going to get rid of all of your Aeon's End? How hard is that, right? Have you tried selling a Marvel Legendary situation? Or even any of these multi-expansion games? You end up getting like 50 cents on the dollar. Again, not a huge deal. But it's just a hassle too. So I'd love to see what they can do with this, but I'm trepidatious in a good and bad way at the same time. And they delivered another year. I give them a lot of kudos. But I think it's a saturation thing. Tell me I'm wrong in the comment section. Tell me why. I don't have a good reason. One of you must have a good reason, right? So, I mean, that's on my radar. It did okay-ish. I don't know, comparatively not as good as the more recent Aeon's End campaigns. 2,500 backers, $176,000. That's okay. That's not great though. That's not great. especially comparatively, right? Then hopping back over to GameFound, which Skytear is going to be launching, what I would assume in the near future, probably when this is delivering, because Monoliths, their campaign from last year, is literally in the process of being delivered. It's being shipped over the oceans right now as we speak. The 1 to 2 player standalone expansion for the relatively good, scheme game thought of as a solo co-op card battler, if you will, of a lane battling type situation we haven't really seen a ton of, mainly driven by deck construction, but also with completed decks in the first place. Relatively well thought of. I mean, it's as well as, the comparisons are a la your Hearthstone-esque. And it's got a good following. People really, really like it. I'd argue that it's probably mostly, solo play. And it's got a fair amount of content now with 2 campaigns already, in the process of being done and a third one on the way, soon and probably the end of Q2 here. How does that make you feel about things? Are you intrigued enough to try it? The third campaign is going to be offering, a campaign. So, tried and true system. Again, like I said at the beginning, where's your saturation for any of these? Is there a saturation for something like this that's lighter and card driven without miniatures? Aeon's end that we just talked about, right? Too much of a good thing. And then, let's just stick with things too here. Leviathan Wilds, speaking of the, cooperative side of things, but also has a solo and, a boss battling. Shadows of Colossus, the board game, right? Second time around from Mooncrab, they came and they killed it. Second time around, they improved the campaign, they improved the game, and they raised 200 grand. Got clever, unique mechanics. It's got a spiral-bound monster page notebook that you're climbing, utilizing, grabbing resources, and mitigating as you're going along the way to take out those monsters. Is it going to be as good as people think, right? This is one of the dark horses I called last year of potential high ceiling, but a little bit, lower basement too, if it just doesn't strike fancy with you. Again, not in general, but just with you. Because again, I can see people really enjoying this element of things. I don't think it's going to be a complete puzzler in the sense that you can solve it because of some of the dice, I believe, as well as some of the asymmetric abilities that you can upgrade your climbers with in the first place. It's got cool looking little meeples, wooden pieces, no miniatures here. Freaking awesome too. So then you go over to the crowdfunding page, right? And you remember this. Of course you do. Good price point. Shuffle, build your deck, climb, jump, and glide, breaking those crystals to get those things. And I think it looks clever. It's just whether or not this cleverness is going to be the fit for you that you're looking for, and you wanted the deluxifications, you want a little mutation, asymmetry to go along with it. Everything's there. And this one, again, supposed to be into February. It's being delivered right now. And so it's in full swing of delivery. And they're going to be doing a GameFound Feast, as I talked about a month ago. And we're going to give you a new expansion called Deep Veil, whatever the heck that is. So you're probably going to have your game just long enough to maybe crack the shrink to know whether or not you're going to get more of it, or more of it. Right? There you go. But again, got on my trade list just out of curiosity. Couldn't pull the trigger, but intriguing. Then, last up, we'll go with Triton Noir and their foray back into Assassin's Creed. Brotherhood of Venice, the Apocalypse expansion. I believe this was the first one that didn't have an actual smattering, just tasting or based off of video game in the first place. And this was more of it in the Brotherhood of Venice now with more expansion content. Stretch goals, $500,000 nearly, 2,700 people doing it, miniature-based, driven sort of Metal Gear Solid Assassin's Creed style, hide them up and don't try and just knock them out. And it's a little bit different gameplay-wise than anything else out there, except for their previous, V Commandos, which huge overlap, I think, in terms of gameplay style there. So the question was, are you really a big IP fan? This is one of those games that is, I think, really well thought of, and that I've also hear very little talked about at the same time. And they offered a metric ton of stuff. And we scrolled about halfway down here. You can get 980 cards, 62 levels, $500 to spend, or a la mode all your different add-ons individually for expansion content, as well as a big freaking plastic tower. Does that intrigue you? Do you need the miniatures? Is it going to be that much of a table presence? I don't know. This is one that, again, I've never really jumped into in that sense, because I feel like the idea of it versus the actuality of it for me. I'm just not a good sneak maneuver type of person. I'm just not. And I think from a cooperative standpoint, it could be a fit, but I think the actual mechanics, I could be very hit or miss on. And so I've never been willing to pull the trigger, look for it heartily or steadily in any sense of the form. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the no FOMO side of things. So interestingly enough, as they say down here, at the time of the campaign, all of the illustrations, all of the sculpts, 90% of the rules, 90% of the level design, they need graphic design, they're 70% done on the playtesting, and this was a year ago, and they thought because of that, you were going to get it in 10 months. Unfortunately, if we click over here, well, not really so much. Still maybe going to have it done production-wise in June, delivery in the warehouses in August, and then you're not going to get it somewhere between September and October. So that's not going to be quite on cue from what they were projecting, and based off of this, that seems like a big jump to actually have all of that still be done in a year. In the sense that I would have thought it would have been a little sooner too, and they probably did internally as well. So is it going to be the make it or break it expansion for this? Probably not. It's going to give you more. That's the theme, I guess, of this video without me even trying. We'll see. There you go. May, a year ago. How does it make you feel? Some stuff delivered, some stuff literally in the way to get to your hands, and some stuff not even close. Right? A year ago. Some of that stuff doesn't even seem like a year ago, right? And some of it seems like more than a year ago. Aeon Trespass Odyssey, if you had told me that it was only a year ago, I would have been like, oh wow, that seemed like a year and a half ago. Same thing with Monster Hunter. Thought that was a lot further back than that one as well. But you know what? It's kind of why it's fun doing this and saying, oh, whoa, oh, when was that? What was that? How do I feel about that? Oh yeah, that's right. So there you go. That's all I got. Have a great freaking day. Stay classy, play something fun. Get rid of some games. Get rid of some games. Get rid of some games. I'm trying. I'm doing a very poor job of it. I think I almost got scammed the other day. May have gotten scammed. It's still to be determined. Well, got lied to at least. Nah, you don't need to hear about that. That'll be a whole separate video though. Peace out. See you around. You can't end the video like that, Chris, can you? Spoilers. Teasers. Nope, I'm doing it. Peace out.